What if I told you that right now, as you're listening to this, trees are having conversations you can't hear? That forests possess something scientists are calling a wood wide web that operates with more sophistication than the internet in your pocket? Here's what will blow your mind. In 1997, a forest ecologist named Suzanne Simard made a discovery so profound it would fundamentally change our understanding of nature itself. She proved that trees don't just stand alone in silent competition. They're connected underground through networks of fungi that allow them to share nutrients, send warning signals, and even nurture their young. But here's the truly shocking part. When a mother tree is dying, she sends her remaining nutrients to her offspring through this network, essentially giving her children an inheritance. This isn't just cooperation. This is love, measurable and real, happening beneath your feet right now in a language of chemistry and electrical impulses. And this is just the beginning. Because as you drift off tonight, I'm going to share with you nature facts so calming, so perfectly designed to quiet your racing mind, that you'll understand why the natural world is the ultimate sleep aid. We're talking about the mathematical precision of waves hitting the shore, the ancient wisdom hidden in moss growth patterns, and why the sound of rain has a frequency that literally synchronizes with your brain waves to induce sleep. Before we dive deeper, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Give this video a like if you're already feeling more relaxed just thinking about these nature secrets. And comment below telling me what country you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love knowing that we're creating this global community of people seeking peace through nature's wisdom. Are you in Tokyo at 2 a.m.? London at sunset? Miami in the afternoon? Let me know. Now, let's begin this journey into the most calming facts nature has to offer. Think of nature as a master composer who's been perfecting the symphony of relaxation for 4 billion years. Every element you encounter, from the rustle of leaves to the pattern of clouds, has been refined through countless iterations to create perfect harmony. Let's start with something you've experienced but never truly understood: the sound of ocean waves. In 2015, marine biologist Dr. Wallace J. Nichols published research revealing why water sounds have such a profound calming effect on the human brain. The frequency of waves crashing on shore falls between 8 and 14 hertz. This is the exact range of alpha brain waves, the state your mind enters just before sleep. But here's the beautiful part. The ocean isn't trying to help you sleep. This is pure coincidence, a cosmic alignment between the physics of water and the evolution of your consciousness. When you hear waves, your brain doesn't just relax, it synchronizes. It matches its rhythm to the rhythm that's been playing since before your ancestors walked upright. Now, let me share something even more profound. Every raindrop that falls on a leaf creates a unique sound. Scientists at MIT, in 2018, analyzed over 10,000 individual raindrops hitting various surfaces and discovered that no two impacts produce identical sound signatures. The speed of the drop, the angle of impact, the texture of the surface, the humidity of the air. All these variables combine to create a completely unique acoustic event. When you listen to rain, you're hearing something that has never existed before and will never exist again. You're witnessing billions of tiny, unrepeatable moments of creation. And your brain recognizes this randomness as natural, as opposed to the repetitive, predictable sounds of human machinery that cause stress. Rain is unpredictable, but not chaotic. Complex, but not overwhelming. It's the perfect white noise because it contains infinite variation within a narrow range of frequencies. Here's where it gets interesting. Forests create their own rain. This phenomenon, called biotic pump theory, was extensively documented by Russian physicists Anastasia Makareva and Viktor Gorshkov in 2007. Trees release water vapor through transpiration, and this creates low-pressure areas that literally pull moisture from the ocean inland. The Amazon rainforest generates nearly half of its own rainfall through this process. Think of it like this. The forest is a living organism that drinks by creating its own weather. When you walk through a forest and feel that particular dampness in the air, that subtle coolness even on warm days, you're experiencing the breath of millions of trees working in concert. They're not just standing there. They're actively maintaining the conditions for their own survival, and coincidentally, creating the humid, oxygen-rich environment that makes forest air so calming to breathe. Indigenous peoples have known this for thousands of years. Science just caught up. Let me paint you a picture of something happening right now in forests around the world. As the sun sets, trees physically relax. Yes, you heard that right. In 2016, a team led by physicist Andres Linsky used laser scanning to measure the precise position of tree branches throughout day and night cycles. They discovered that trees drop their branches by up to 4 inches at night and lift them again with the sunrise. The leading theory is that this happens because trees relax their water pressure at night, similar to how your muscles relax when you sleep. Trees have a circadian rhythm, just like you do. When you see a tree silhouetted against the evening sky, its branches slightly drooped, you're watching it get ready for bed. And if trees, beings that live for centuries, that stand through storms and droughts and the slow turn of seasons, if even they need to rest, maybe it's okay that you do too. Now here's a fact that will change how you see moss forever. Moss is one of Earth's oldest land plants, existing for over 400 million years. It survived the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. It watched continents drift apart. And here's what researchers at the University of Bristol discovered in 2013. Moss grows in patterns that perfectly optimize water collection and distribution across its surface. These patterns follow mathematical principles called fractals, the same self-similar structures you see in river deltas, lightning bolts, and blood vessels. But moss isn't calculating anything. It doesn't have a brain or even simple nervous tissue. It achieves this mathematical perfection through pure physics, through the simple interaction between water, gravity, and cellular growth. When you see moss on a stone, you're looking at living geometry, at nature solving complex equations without thought, without effort, simply by being exactly what it is. What if I told you that mountains are breathing? In 2009, hydrologist Dr. Stephen Wanzel published research showing that mountains inhale and exhale water on daily cycles. During the day, as temperatures rise, water in mountain soil expands and flows downslope. At night, as temperatures drop, water contracts and flows back uphill through capillary action in soil pores. Mountains literally breathe water in and out of their slopes. The ancient mountains of Appalachia, worn smooth over hundreds of millions of years, still breathe this way. The young, sharp peaks of the Himalayas breathe this way. And if you camp on a mountainside, some of the coolness you feel at night is the mountain's exhalation, its release of the day's accumulated warmth. You are sleeping on the chest of something vast and alive, feeling it breathe beneath you. Here's something about snow that will make winter nights feel different. Each snowflake forms around a tiny particle of dust or pollen. As it falls through clouds, water vapor freezes onto this seed in patterns determined by temperature and humidity. The famous truth that no two snowflakes are identical comes from physicist Wilson Bentley, who photographed over 5,000 snowflakes between 1885 and 1931 and never found duplicates. But here's the calming part. Each snowflake's shape is determined by its journey through the sky. 2 flakes falling side by side, experiencing almost identical conditions, will form nearly identical patterns. A snowstorm isn't chaos. It's millions of flakes, each telling the story of its particular path through the clouds, but all of them harmonizing because they fell through the same sky. When snow blankets the ground in silence, that silence is real. Snow's crystal structure absorbs sound waves. A fresh snowfall can reduce ambient noise by up to 60%. The world doesn't just look quieter under snow. It actually is quieter. Nature provides its own soundproofing. Let's talk about something you've definitely experienced, but never questioned. Why does the sky turn those specific colors at sunset? In 1871, physicist Lord Rayleigh explained that blue light scatters more than red light because of its shorter wavelength. During the day, you see blue because it bounces around the atmosphere. At sunset, light travels through more atmosphere, scattering away all the blue and leaving the reds and oranges. But here's what makes this truly special. The exact colors you see depend on the precise amount of dust, water vapor, and pollution in the air. The sunset you witnessed yesterday will never happen again. The particular arrangement of particles in the atmosphere at that moment, at that location, created a unique filtering system for the sun's light. Every sunset is a one-time only art show performed by physics. And the reason sunsets make you feel peaceful isn't just cultural conditioning. Studies by environmental psychologist Dr. Kalevi Kirpila in 2014 showed that warm colors, especially the oranges and soft reds of sunset, trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, the part that tells your body it's safe to rest. Now I want you to imagine something. Deep in the ocean, at depths where no sunlight reaches, there are creatures producing their own light through chemical reactions in their bodies. This bioluminescence, studied extensively by marine biologist Dr. Edith Witter, serves various purposes: communication, hunting, camouflage. But here's the meditative part. Some species of jellyfish pulse with light in perfect rhythm, like living metronomes drifting through the dark. They're not thinking about it. They're not trying to be rhythmic. The chemical reaction that produces their light simply operates on a cycle, as reliable as a heartbeat. And in the deepest parts of the ocean, where pressure would crush you instantly, where cold is absolute, these tiny beings pulse their soft blue light into the void, creating patterns of illumination that no human eye witnessed until we developed deep-sea cameras in the 1960s. For millions of years, this beauty existed with no one to appreciate it, which means beauty isn't created by observation. It's intrinsic. It exists whether you're watching or not. Here's a retention hook for you. In about 10 minutes, I'm going to tell you about a plant that can count, that has memory, that challenges everything you think you know about consciousness. But first, let's ground ourselves in something simpler. Leaves change color in fall because they're dying, right? Not exactly. Here's what botanist Dr. William Ho discovered through his research in the 1990s. The brilliant reds, oranges, and yellows were always there in the leaf. During spring and summer, chlorophyll, the green pigment that captures sunlight for photosynthesis, masks these colors. As days shorten and temperatures drop, trees stop producing chlorophyll. The green fades, revealing the other pigments that were present all along. But some trees go further. They actively produce anthocyanins, the pigments that create bright reds and purples, specifically during fall. Why would a tree spend energy creating new pigments in leaves it's about to drop? The leading theory is that these bright colors serve as a sunscreen, protecting the leaf as the tree extracts remaining nutrients before letting it go. The tree is being careful with its dying leaves, gentle even, making sure to recover every bit of nitrogen and phosphorus before the final release. Fall colors aren't death. They're revelation and careful preparation. They're the tree being efficient and beautiful at the same time. Let's talk about something happening in your backyard right now. Earthworms are tilling the soil, creating channels that allow water and air to penetrate deep underground. Charles Darwin, yes, that Darwin, spent the last years of his life studying earthworms. In 1881, he published a book demonstrating that earthworms could bury a building under their castings in just a few decades. He calculated that earthworms bring 10 tons of soil per acre to the surface every year. But here's the part that should amaze you. Earthworms have no eyes, no ears, no nose in the conventional sense. They navigate through soil by sensing vibrations and chemical gradients. They experience the world as a series of textures, moisture levels, and nutrient concentrations. To an earthworm, Soil isn't dirt. It's a three-dimensional landscape, as varied and navigable as a forest is to you. And as they tunnel through this landscape, they create the very structure that allows plant roots to grow deep, that prevents erosion, that keeps the surface world alive. Earthworms are engineering the planet from below, and they've been doing it for over 600 million years, since before plants even colonized land. They prepared the soil that would eventually allow forests to exist. Here's something about rivers that will change your evening walks. Rivers don't just flow downhill. They meander, creating those beautiful S-curves you see from airplane windows. In 1926, geologist Albert Einstein, the cousin of the more famous Einstein, developed the mathematical equations explaining why rivers curve. It's a feedback loop. A slight bend causes faster flow on the outside of the curve, which erodes that bank more quickly, which increases the bend, which increases the erosion. But rivers don't curve infinitely. Eventually, a meander becomes so pronounced that the river cuts through its own neck, creating an oxbow lake and starting the process over. Rivers are constantly creating and destroying their own landscapes, but they do it so slowly that from your perspective, they seem permanent. That river you walk beside has moved back and forth across the valley floor countless times, but it does so on a timescale that makes human lifetimes look like eye blinks. When you stand beside a river, you're watching something that appears still, but is actually flowing through time and space simultaneously, reshaping the earth with patience that spans millennia. Now for that plant I promised you, the Venus flytrap. In 2016, biophysicist Dr. Rainer Hedrick discovered something extraordinary. The Venus flytrap can count. Its trap has tiny hairs inside, and when an insect brushes against one hair, nothing happens. But if a second hair is triggered within 20 seconds, the trap snaps shut. The plant is counting to avoid wasting energy on false alarms, like falling raindrops. But it gets better. If the insect continues struggling, triggering the hairs more times, the plant counts those triggers and uses the total to decide how much digestive enzyme to produce. More triggers mean bigger prey, mean more enzyme needed. A plant with no brain, no nervous system, is performing basic arithmetic and making resource allocation decisions. How? Scientists believe the plant uses calcium ion concentrations in its cells as a kind of short-term memory. The first trigger creates a small calcium spike. If a second trigger happens before the calcium dissipates, the concentrations add together, reaching the threshold to close the trap. It's counting using chemistry. Intelligence without thought. Memory without mind. Here's what this means. The line between conscious and unconscious, between thinking and not thinking, is far blurrier than you imagine. Plants respond to their environment, remember past events, make decisions, communicate, and protect their offspring. They do all of this without anything we would recognize as a brain, which raises a profound question. What if consciousness isn't an all-or-nothing phenomenon? What if it's a spectrum, and we're just somewhere on that spectrum, not at its peak? What if the universe is more alive, more aware than we ever imagined? Let me tell you about something called the overview effect. When astronauts see Earth from space for the first time, many report a profound cognitive shift. They see our planet as a single organism, a ball of blue and white and green hanging in the void, with no visible borders, no divisions. Astronaut Ron Garan described it as seeing Earth breathing. And here's the thing. Earth does breathe. Scientists call it the Gaia hypothesis, proposed by James Lovelock in 1972. The idea is that Earth's living and non-living components form a complex, self-regulating system that maintains conditions suitable for life. The oxygen you breathe was produced by photosynthetic organisms. The carbon dioxide they need is produced by animals and volcanoes. Ocean currents distribute heat. Clouds reflect sunlight. Forests create rain. Everything is connected in feedback loops that have kept Earth's temperature relatively stable for billions of years. despite the sun getting 30% brighter over that time. Earth might not be conscious in the way you are, but it exhibits homeostasis, the ability to maintain stable conditions, which is one definition of life. You're not standing on a planet. You're standing on an organism, and you are part of it, one of trillions of cells in a body so large you can't see its edges. Now think about this as you prepare to sleep tonight. Your body is 70% water. That water came from somewhere. Some of it was rain that fell last week. Some of it you drank from a river that collected water from mountains. Some of those mountains were formed when tectonic plates collided millions of years ago. The water in your cells has been cycling through the environment for billions of years. It was in dinosaurs. It was in ancient oceans. It was locked in ice caps and released. It evaporated from tropical leaves and fell as snow on Antarctic peaks. Every atom of water in your body has been on an unimaginable journey through deep time and vast spaces, and right now, it's part of you. You are made of recycled stardust and ancient water, temporarily organized into the pattern called you, borrowed from the universe, and one day to be returned, but for now, miraculously conscious and aware. Here's something about caves that embodies peace. Deep caves maintain constant temperatures year-round because they're insulated by massive amounts of rock. In Kentucky's Mammoth Cave, the world's longest cave system, the temperature stays at 54 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of surface weather. In these caves, time moves differently. Stalactites and stalagmites grow at rates measured in centuries per inch. A formation the size of your hand might represent 1,000 years of mineralized water dripping in perfect darkness. Cave scientist Dr. Ira Sosowski has studied caves where the silence is so complete that you can hear your own heartbeat, your blood flowing through your veins. In these spaces, removed from sunlight, from wind, from the surface world's chaos, there are ecosystems that have evolved in total darkness. Blind fish, colorless salamanders, insects that navigate by sensing air currents. These creatures have lived in perpetual night for millions of years, and they're perfectly adapted, perfectly content. They don't miss the sun because they never knew it. They've found their niche in the dark and made it home. What can you learn from this? That peace isn't found by eliminating challenges. It's found by adapting so completely to your environment that challenge becomes invisible. Those cave creatures aren't struggling in darkness. They're thriving in it. And you, in your particular environment with your particular challenges, you can do the same. Not by changing your circumstances, though sometimes that helps, but by changing how you fit into them, by finding your niche and settling into it like water finding its level. Let's talk about something you can test right now. Forest air contains phytoncides, airborne chemicals that plants release to protect themselves from insects and disease. In 2004, immunologist Dr. Ching Li in Japan discovered that breathing forest air significantly increases natural killer cells in the human immune system. These cells fight cancer and viral infections. A 2-hour forest walk can boost immune function for up to 30 days. But here's the beautiful part. The trees aren't trying to help you. They're defending themselves, and you benefit accidentally by breathing their chemical warfare. This is nature's generosity. It doesn't require intention. The tree protects itself, and in doing so, protects you. You are surrounded by accidental kindnesses, by systems that benefit you as a side effect of their own survival. The universe is less hostile than you think. Now I'm going to share something that ties together everything we've discussed so far. Are you still with me? Because here's where we go deeper. In 1952, mathematician Alan Turing, famous for breaking Nazi codes during World War II, published his final paper before his death. It wasn't about computers or cryptography. It was about patterns in nature. Specifically, how simple chemical reactions could create the stripes on zebras, the spots on leopards, the spiral arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. He proposed that two chemicals, one an activator and one an inhibitor, diffusing through tissue at different rates, could spontaneously create patterns without any genetic blueprint. In 2006, scientists finally confirmed Turing's predictions by watching these patterns form in real time in developing embryos. Here's what this means. The beauty you see in nature, the patterns that seem so designed, so intentional, they emerge from simple rules playing out repeatedly. Complexity from simplicity. Order from chaos. No designer needed, just time and chemistry and mathematics. Think of it like this. You drop one grain of sand on a table, then another, and another. For a while, nothing interesting happens, just a pile of sand. But keep adding grains, and suddenly, without warning, the pile collapses in an avalanche. The system reached a critical point where one more grain changed everything. Scientists call this self-organized criticality, and it explains everything from earthquakes to stock market crashes to the distribution of forest fire sizes. Natural systems balance on the edge of order and chaos, and this balance creates the complex patterns you find beautiful. The fractal branching of trees, the spiral of a nautilus shell, the hexagonal structure of a beehive. These aren't created by intelligence or design. They're created by simple rules iterated endlessly, and they're beautiful precisely because they contain both order and randomness, predictability and surprise. Here's a fact about clouds that will make you see them differently. Clouds form when water vapor condenses around tiny particles, dust or salt from sea spray. But the size and shape of each cloud depends on air temperature, humidity, and wind conditions in its specific location. A cumulus cloud, those puffy white clouds of summer, can weigh over 1 million pounds. 1 million pounds of water just floating in the air because it's dispersed into billions of tiny droplets that fall so slowly that air resistance keeps them aloft. When you look up at clouds, you're seeing water that's too heavy to stay up, but falling so slowly it appears to float. You're seeing the balance point between gravity and air resistance made visible. And clouds are constantly forming and dissolving. The cloud you're looking at right now is not the same cloud you were looking at 30 seconds ago. Water is constantly evaporating from its edges, condensing in its center, being added by updrafts, removed by downdrafts. It maintains its general shape, but its substance is in constant flux. Just like you, the cells in your body are constantly dying and being replaced. The atoms that compose you are in constant exchange with your environment. You maintain your pattern, but your substance changes. You are a cloud of atoms, maintaining a human shape through the flow of energy and matter. And when you die, you won't disappear. You'll just stop maintaining the pattern. Your atoms will go on to be part of other things, other patterns, and in that way, you're already immortal. Let me tell you about something called the phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus is essential for all life. It's in your DNA, your bones, your cell membranes. But unlike carbon or nitrogen, phosphorus doesn't have a gaseous phase. It can't cycle through the atmosphere. It gets locked in rocks, released slowly by weathering, absorbed by plants, eaten by animals, returned to soil in waste and decay, eventually washed to the ocean, where it settles in sediments, it's compressed into rock, and the cycle starts over. This takes millions of years. The phosphorus in your bones might have been in a dinosaur's bones 200 million years ago. It might have been in a fern before that, in a trilobite before that, in some ancient bacterium before that. This same phosphorus has been cycling through living things for billions of years, and after you're gone, it will continue cycling, building new bones, new DNA, new life. You are not separate from nature. You are nature becoming conscious of itself, temporarily, before returning to the cycle. Here's something about the moon that affects you right now. The moon's gravity creates tides in the ocean, but it also creates tides in the earth itself. The solid ground beneath you rises and falls by about a foot every day due to the moon's pull. You can't feel it because you move with it, Like someone in an elevator can't feel the building's height, but it's happening. The moon is pulling on your body too, though the effect is too small to measure. Every cell in your body is experiencing slightly different gravitational force, depending on whether the moon is overhead or on the opposite side of Earth. You are connected to the moon by invisible threads of gravity, being tugged gently, constantly, like a baby being rocked. And the moon is slowly moving away from Earth, about 1.5 inches per year, as the energy of Earth's rotation is transferred to the moon's orbit. Billions of years from now, the moon will be gone, escaped into independent orbit around the sun. But for now, it's here, pulling the tides, stabilizing Earth's axis, making the complex life that led to you possible. Now, here's a retention hook. In the next section, I'm going to tell you about how glaciers sing, how deserts bloom with invisible life, and why the northern lights might be affecting your dreams. But first, let me ask you something. Have you subscribed yet? If not, hit that button now. This journey we're on together requires commitment. And I'm curious, what time is it where you are? Are you listening to this at night, preparing for sleep? In the morning, starting your day with calm? During a stressful afternoon, seeking peace? Comment below. Let's create a moment of connection across time zones and borders. Glaciers make sounds as they move. In 2008, glaciologist Dr. Aaron Pettit began recording glaciers in Alaska and discovered they produce low frequency vibrations as ice crystals scrape against each other and as water flows through internal channels. These sounds are mostly below human hearing range, but when sped up, they sound like groans and creaks and whistles. A glacier, that seemingly static river of ice, is actually in constant motion, constant conversation with itself. And here's the profound part. Glaciers contain air bubbles trapped when the snow was compressed into ice. Scientists can extract these bubbles and measure the atmosphere from thousands of years ago. A glacier is a record of Earth's climate history, layer upon layer, like tree rings, but made of frozen time. When a glacier melts, it's not just ice turning to water. It's ancient air being released, atmospheres from before human civilization, from the last ice age, from times when Earth was radically different, all exhaling at once. And we're losing glaciers at unprecedented rates. We're erasing history written in ice, losing records we can never recover. But even in loss, there's a kind of peace. Everything that exists will one day cease to exist in its current form. Glaciers melt, mountains erode, stars die, and that's not tragedy. That's transformation. The water from melting glaciers flows to the ocean, evaporates, falls as rain, nurtures forests, and eventually, some of it becomes ice again. Nothing is truly lost. It just changes shape. Let me tell you about something called cryptobiotic soil, also known as desert crust. In arid environments, cyanobacteria, lichens, mosses, and fungi form a living layer on the soil surface. This layer, studied extensively by soil ecologist Dr. Jane Belknap, takes 50 to 250 years to develop. It prevents erosion, fixes nitrogen, and allows seeds to germinate. But it's incredibly fragile. One footprint can destroy decades of growth. And here's the thing. This crust is invisible to most people. They see bare soil and walk across it, never knowing they're destroying a complex ecosystem. But the crust is patient. If protected, it will slowly recover. It doesn't resent being stepped on. It doesn't feel anger or frustration. It just exists, grows when it can, recovers when it must. There's a lesson there. Not everything that's fragile shows its fragility. Not everything that's valuable is recognized. And sometimes the right response to being damaged isn't anger, but patience, the slow work of rebuilding without complaint. Here's something about coral reefs that challenges your assumptions. Corals are animals, not plants, though they look like colorful rocks. Each coral polyp is a tiny creature related to jellyfish and sea anemones. But coral polyps can't survive alone. They form colonies with algae, called zooxanthellae, living inside their tissues. The algae photosynthesize, producing energy, and the coral provides protection. This is symbiosis so complete that neither can survive without the other. And coral reefs, built by countless generations of these polyp colonies, create ecosystems that support 25% of all marine species, despite covering less than 1% of the ocean floor. But here's the beautiful part. Coral reefs grow at the rate of about half an inch to 7 inches per year. The Great Barrier Reef is about 600,000 years old. It's a structure built by tiny animals, each smaller than your fingernail, working without plan or blueprint, dying and being built upon by new generations, slowly over time spans that make human civilization look like a brief flash. And you, in your life, with your challenges and your small daily efforts, you're building something too. You can't see the final structure. You'll never see it completed. But every day you're adding to it, and long after you're gone, it will remain, a foundation for others to build upon. Now let's talk about the northern lights, the aurora borealis. These dancing curtains of green and red light are caused by charged particles from the sun, colliding with Earth's magnetic field. When these particles hit oxygen and nitrogen in the atmosphere, they cause those atoms to glow. The green color you typically see comes from oxygen at lower altitudes. The rare red auroras come from oxygen at higher altitudes. But here's what's fascinating. Scientists have discovered that the aurora produces sounds. Not always, but sometimes on very cold, still nights, people report hearing crackling or popping sounds synchronized with bright auroral displays. For decades, this was dismissed as imagination. How could something happening 60 miles above Earth produce sounds you could hear? But in 2012, researcher Unto K. Line from Finland recorded these sounds and determined they come from an inversion layer much closer to Earth, where charged particles from the aurora create electrical discharges. The aurora is so powerful, it affects the atmosphere all the way down to the surface. And some researchers speculate that the electromagnetic activity from auroras might affect brain function, possibly influencing dreams or mood in people who live in far northern latitudes. You might be connected to cosmic events in ways you never suspected, your consciousness subtly influenced by particles from the sun dancing through Earth's magnetic field. Here's a fact about deserts that will surprise you. Deserts bloom. Not often, but when they do, it's spectacular. The Atacama Desert in Chile, one of the driest places on Earth, experiences a phenomenon called desierto florido, the flowering desert. When rare rains fall, seeds that have been dormant for years suddenly germinate, and the desert explodes with color. Millions of flowers covering hundreds of square miles, all blooming at once because they've been waiting patiently for this exact moment. The last major flowering was in 2017, and before that, 2015. Before that, you might have to wait 5 or 10 years. Those seeds just wait in the soil, metabolically dormant, not dead, but not really alive either, in a state biologists call anhydrobiosis. And when the rain finally comes, they respond within days. From barren wasteland to flower paradise, and back to wasteland in a few weeks. Here's what you can learn from this. Patience isn't passive. Those seeds are prepared. They're ready. And when conditions are right, they explode into action. Sometimes the right strategy isn't constant effort. Sometimes it's waiting for the right moment, conserving energy, staying ready, and then when opportunity comes, giving it everything you have. Let me tell you about mycorrhizal networks, those underground fungal connections I mentioned at the beginning. Scientists now know these networks are far more complex than initially thought. Research by Dr. Suzanne Simard, who I mentioned earlier, shows that older trees, the mother trees, use these networks to nurture their offspring. But they also use them to sabotage competitor species. A Douglas fir mother tree will send nutrients to Douglas fir seedlings while sending toxic chemicals to pine seedlings in the same network. The network is used for both cooperation and competition, for both nurturing and warfare. And here's the thing. A forest is healthier for it. Biodiversity increases. The strongest trees of each species survive. The whole ecosystem benefits from this combination of collaboration and competition. It's not one or the other. It's both simultaneously, and that's what creates resilience. You don't have to choose between cooperation and self-interest. Nature doesn't. Nature finds ways to do both, and in the balance between them, complexity flourishes. Here's something about bird migration that should blow your mind. Some birds, like the Arctic tern, migrate from the Arctic to Antarctica and back every year, a round trip of about 44,000 miles. These birds see more daylight than any other animal on Earth because they experience 2 summers per year. But how do they navigate? For decades, scientists knew birds use the sun, stars, and Earth's magnetic field. But in 2018, researchers discovered that some birds can literally see magnetic fields. They have a protein in their eyes called cryptochrome. It changes shape in response to magnetic fields, and this creates a visual overlay of magnetic field lines. When a bird looks at the sky, it sees not just light, but also a pattern of magnetic information, like having a compass built into your vision. And these birds fly thousands of miles, often non-stop for days, navigating by senses you don't possess, experiencing the world in ways you can't imagine. Every bird you see is carrying within it a memory of routes flown by its ancestors, genetic knowledge accumulated over thousands of generations. It doesn't need to learn where to go. It knows, in its cells, in its DNA, in the very structure of its brain. Now think about what you carry in your cells. Instincts you never questioned. Fears that seem irrational, but might have kept your ancestors alive. Preferences you can't explain. You are not a blank slate. You are the product of billions of years of evolution, of countless lives lived and lessons learned, all compressed into the code of your DNA. And you carry knowledge you don't know you have. Your immune system recognizes threats it's never encountered by matching them to patterns inherited from your ancestors. Your gut instincts, that feeling that something is wrong or right without knowing why, that's your ancient brain processing information faster than your conscious mind can follow. You are older than you think, wiser than you know, connected to a lineage that stretches back to the first self-replicating molecules in Earth's ancient oceans. Let's talk about something called anaerobic glycolysis. When you exercise hard and your muscles burn, that's lactate building up because your cells are producing energy without oxygen. This is an incredibly ancient metabolic pathway, one that evolved billions of years ago in Earth's early atmosphere, which had very little oxygen. Your cells still remember how to survive without air because your ancestors, microscopic and ancient, lived in an oxygen-free world. Every cell in your body contains mitochondria, the organelles that produce energy. These mitochondria were once independent bacteria that were absorbed by a larger cell in a process called endosymbiosis. This happened about 1.5 billion years ago, and it was such a successful partnership that every complex organism on Earth descended from that original merger. You are not one organism. You are a community. Your cells contain the descendants of ancient bacteria, still separate enough to have their own DNA, but integrated enough that you die without them. You are a walking ecosystem, a collaboration between organisms that have been cooperating for over 1 billion years. Here's a retention hook for you. In the next section, I'm going to reveal how trees communicate through electrical signals faster than your neurons fire, how tide pools contain entire universes, and why the deepest parts of the ocean might hold answers to the origin of life itself. Stay with me. We're approaching the most mind-bending material yet. Before we continue, let me ask you something. How are you feeling right now? If this is helping you relax, if you're learning things that shift your perspective, hit that like button. It helps other people find this peace. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. We're building something here, a community of people who find calm and understanding, who see wonder as a path to peace. Trees communicate through electrical signals, and they do it faster than your brain processes information. In 2013, plant scientist Dr. Heidi Appel discovered that when a caterpillar chews on a leaf, the plant sends an electrical signal throughout its entire structure in less than a second. This signal triggers chemical defenses, making the leaves less nutritious and sometimes toxic. But the signal also goes to neighboring plants through both root connections and airborne chemical messengers. An entire section of forest can know about a pest attack and begin defending itself in the time it takes you to blink. And these signals travel through plant tissue at speeds up to 100 feet per second. Your neurons, those specialized cells that make thought possible, transmit signals at about 250 feet per second. Plants are only slightly slower than your conscious mind, and they're doing it without a brain, without neurons, using simple electrical charges moving through ordinary cells. What does this mean for consciousness? If plants can sense their environment, remember past events, make decisions, communicate, and coordinate defenses, all without a nervous system, then consciousness, as we understand, it might not require a brain. Maybe awareness is a property of complex systems, period. Maybe the universe is shot through with primitive forms of experience, and what we call consciousness is just an elaborate version of something that exists everywhere in varying degrees. Panpsychism, the idea that consciousness is fundamental to matter itself, was once dismissed as mysticism. But quantum physicists like Roger Penrose and biologists like Giulio Tononi are developing serious theories along these lines. Not that atoms think, but that experience might be a basic feature of reality, like mass or charge, and complex systems like brains don't create consciousness so much as concentrate it, focus it, elaborate it into self-aware thought. Let me tell you about tide pools. These temporary ecosystems, exposed at low tide and submerged at high tide, contain entire food webs in spaces smaller than your bathtub. Barnacles filter plankton. Limpets graze on algae. Sea stars hunt mussels. Anemones sting small fish. And all of this resets twice a day with the tides. Marine biologist Dr. Robert Payne conducted famous experiments in the 1960s, removing sea stars from tide pools. Without this predator, mussels took over, crowding out other species, and biodiversity collapsed. The sea star was what Payne called a keystone species, one whose impact on the ecosystem is disproportionate to its numbers. Remove one species, and the entire system changes. This is true everywhere. Ecosystems are not collections of independent organisms. They're networks of relationships, and each species occupies a niche that affects everything else. You are part of multiple ecosystems. Your workplace, your family, your community, and your presence matters more than you think. You might be someone's keystone species, the person whose presence keeps their world stable. Never underestimate your importance to the systems you're part of. Here's something about the deep ocean that should fundamentally change how you think about life. In 1977, scientists exploring the Galapagos Rift, a volcanic area on the ocean floor, discovered something impossible. Entire ecosystems thriving in total darkness, at crushing pressures, in water heated to hundreds of degrees by volcanic vents. These ecosystems don't depend on sunlight. They depend on photosynthesis, bacteria that extract energy from hydrogen sulfide spewing from the vents. These bacteria form the base of a food web that includes giant tube worms, eyeless shrimp, and white crabs. Life in these vent communities can be incredibly dense. Hundreds of pounds of biomass per square meter, comparable to a rainforest, in pitch darkness, at depths where the pressure would instantly crush an unprotected human. And here's the thing. These vent ecosystems might be where life on Earth began. The conditions around hydrothermal vents, the chemical gradients, the mineral-rich water, the energy from Earth's interior rather than the sun, All of this might have been the crucible where the first self-replicating molecules formed. Life might have started in the deep, in the dark, in water heated by the planet's molten core, and only later colonized the sunlit surface. If true, then the sun isn't the source of all life. Earth's internal heat is. And this means life could exist on worlds with no sunlight at all, in the oceans beneath the ice of Europa, or Enceladus. Anywhere, liquid water and chemical energy exist together. Now let me connect this to something personal. You are the descendant of organisms that survived in unimaginable conditions. Your ancestors lived through ice ages and droughts. They survived on continents that split apart. They endured mass extinctions. They adapted to oxygen appearing in the atmosphere, an event that was catastrophic for anaerobic life, but eventually enabled complex organisms like you. Every challenge you face, every difficult moment, you're equipped to handle it because your ancestors handled worse. You carry within you the resilience of 4 billion years of survival. When you feel weak, remember that your existence proves your strength. You are the product of an unbroken chain of survivors, stretching back to the origin of life itself. Here's a fact about sand that will make beaches feel different. Most sand is made of quartz, silicon dioxide, one of the most common minerals on Earth. But each grain of sand is a tiny crystal. And if you look at sand under a microscope, you see they come in an incredible variety of shapes and colors. Some beaches have sand made from coral, ground up by parrotfish that eat coral and excrete sand. Some volcanic beaches have black sand made of basalt. Some tropical beaches have pink sand from crushed shells. And each grain of sand has a story. It might have been part of a mountain, weathered by wind and rain, carried by rivers to the ocean, tumbled by waves for thousands of years until it reached its current size and shape. When you run your hand through sand, you're touching the remains of mountains, the result of geological timescales operating on continental scales. And those grains will continue their journey. Some will be blown inland by wind. Some will cement together into sandstone, becoming rock again. Some will be subducted into the mantle, at tectonic plate boundaries, melted, and eventually erupted from a volcano as new rock. The sand you're touching is in the middle of a cycle that takes hundreds of millions of years to complete. Let's talk about something you've definitely experienced, but probably never questioned. Why does wet soil smell the way it does? That distinctive earthy smell after rain is called petrichor, a term coined in 1964 by Australian researchers Isabel Joy Baer and Richard Thomas. They discovered that during dry periods, plants release oils that are absorbed by soil and rocks. When it rains, these oils are released into the air, along with a compound called geosmin, produced by soil bacteria. Geosmin is one of the most powerfully scented compounds known. Humans can detect it at concentrations of 5 parts per trillion, which means you could detect 1 grain of geosmin in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And you find this smell pleasant because your ancestors evolved in environments where rain meant survival. The smell of rain meant water, food, relief from drought. Your positive response to petrichor is inherited memory, your brain recognizing the scent of life continuing. When you smell rain on dry earth, you're smelling the same thing your ancestors smelled 10,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, and responding with the same instinctive relief. Here's something about lightning that connects to everything we've discussed. Lightning is a massive electrical discharge, up to 1 billion volts, that heats the air to 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 times hotter than the sun's surface. This heat causes nitrogen and oxygen in the air to combine, creating nitrogen oxides that fall to the ground with rain and fertilize plants. Lightning is one of the primary ways nitrogen gets fixed from the atmosphere into a form plants can use. Before the invention of industrial nitrogen fixation, lightning and nitrogen-fixing bacteria in soil were the only sources of bioavailable nitrogen. Lightning was literally feeding the world. And lightning occurs about 40 to 50 times per second worldwide. Right now, as you listen to this, Lightning is striking somewhere on Earth. The planet is constantly sparking with electrical discharges that fertilize the soil, reset the electrical balance between ground and sky, and in doing so, make life possible. Here's a retention hook. In the next section, I'm going to tell you about how silence isn't empty, how darkness is full of light you can't see, and why the concept of emptiness might be the biggest illusion of all. But before we go there, take a breath. Notice where you are. Feel the surface beneath you. You are here now, part of a universe so intricate and interconnected that every breath you take involves chemistry perfected over billions of years. Let's talk about silence. True silence, the complete absence of sound, is almost impossible to experience on Earth. In 2015, Microsoft built the quietest place on Earth, an anechoic chamber that absorbs 99.99% of sound. The chamber measures negative 20.6 decibels, which is below the threshold of human hearing. People who enter this chamber report unsettling experiences. They hear their heartbeat, their breathing, even the sound of their stomach digesting food and their joints moving. The quietest place on Earth is inside your body, but in nature, silence doesn't exist. Even in the quietest forest at night, there are sounds. Leaves rustling, nocturnal animals moving, your own breathing. And below that, infrasound, frequencies too low for human hearing. Elephants communicate over miles using infrasound. Whales sing in frequencies that travel across entire ocean basins. The aurora borealis, as I mentioned earlier, makes sounds most people can't hear. Silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the absence of sound you're capable of detecting. The universe is never quiet. You're just tuned to a narrow band of frequencies. And darkness works the same way. True darkness, the complete absence of light, is equally rare. Even in the darkest night, in the most remote wilderness, there's starlight, moonlight, airglow from the upper atmosphere. And below the visible spectrum, there's infrared radiation, thermal energy radiating from every object. Snakes can see in infrared, detecting the heat signature of prey. If you could see in infrared, you'd see the world glowing with heat, nothing ever truly dark. And above the visible spectrum, there's ultraviolet light. Bees see in ultraviolet, and flowers have patterns visible in UV that guide pollinators to nectar. Entire layers of reality are invisible to you simply because your eyes evolved to detect a narrow band of electromagnetic radiation. What you call darkness is just light outside your detection range. Here's what this means. Your perception of reality is radically limited. You see a thin slice of the electromagnetic spectrum. You hear a narrow range of frequencies. You sense temperature within a limited range. But the universe is full of information you can't access. Radio waves from distant galaxies, magnetic fields, gamma rays, quantum fluctuations, and not just physical phenomena. There are thoughts in other minds you can't access, emotions in other beings you can only guess at. Every person you meet is an entire universe of experience that you can only know through the narrow bridge of communication. The world is far richer, far stranger, far more complex than you can ever perceive directly. And yet, your limited perception is exactly what you need. If you could see all wavelengths of light, you'd be overwhelmed. If you could hear all frequencies, you'd be deafened. Evolution didn't give you unlimited perception. It gave you the perception you need to survive and thrive in your specific niche. A dog's superior sense of smell doesn't make your sense of smell inadequate. It means dogs and humans have different needs, different niches. You are perfectly designed for being human. Not for being a dog or a bee or a snake. For being you in your environment with your challenges. And that's enough. Let me tell you about something called the Great Oxygenation Event. About 2.4 billion years ago, cyanobacteria evolved photosynthesis, the ability to extract energy from sunlight. As a byproduct, they produced oxygen. For hundreds of millions of years, This oxygen was absorbed by dissolved iron in the oceans and volcanic gases in the atmosphere. But eventually, the oxygen began accumulating in the atmosphere. For most life on Earth at that time, this was catastrophic. Oxygen is reactive, corrosive. It destroys the organic molecules that anaerobic life depends on. The Great Oxygenation Event was the greatest mass extinction in Earth's history, killing off perhaps 99% of all species. But it also created the conditions for complex life. Oxygen enables high-energy metabolism. Without oxygen, you couldn't exist. Your brain, the most energy-intensive organ per unit mass, requires constant oxygen to function. The catastrophe that killed nearly all life on Earth was the same event that eventually made your existence possible. This is a pattern throughout Earth's history. Mass extinctions create opportunities. The asteroid that killed the dinosaurs allowed mammals to diversify and eventually led to humans. Volcanic eruptions that cause short-term climate chaos also recycle nutrients and create fertile soil. Forest fires, which seem purely destructive, trigger the germination of certain seeds and clear undergrowth, allowing new growth. Destruction and creation are not opposites. They're phases of the same cycle. What seems like an ending is also a beginning. Here's something about fungi that will change how you see decay. When you see a mushroom growing on a fallen log, you're seeing the fruiting body of a fungus. The actual organism is a network of thread-like hyphae growing through the log, breaking down cellulose and lignin, the complex molecules that give wood its structure. Fungi are the primary decomposers in most ecosystems. Without them, dead material would accumulate, nutrients would be locked up in dead tissue, and the cycle of life would stop. Fungi are not destroying the log. They're recycling it, breaking it down into simpler molecules that will feed other organisms. Death is not an end. It's a transformation, a return to the pool of nutrients that will build new life. And the mushroom you see is just the tip of the fungal iceberg. The largest organism on Earth is a fungus, a honey mushroom in Oregon's Blue Mountains, covering 2,384 acres. It's been growing for an estimated 2,400 years, perhaps much longer. This single organism has been quietly breaking down dead wood, recycling nutrients, and enabling forest growth for longer than human civilization has existed in its current form. Now think about your own life. The things that die, the relationships that end, the dreams that don't work out, they're not waste. They're being broken down, recycled, transformed into wisdom, into resilience, into the nutrients that will grow your future. Nothing is wasted. Everything returns to the cycle. You are not a linear progression from birth to death. You are a cycle constantly dying and being reborn at the cellular level, at the psychological level, at the level of identity and understanding. The you that exists right now is not the you that existed a year ago. You've been broken down and rebuilt, and you'll continue this process until the final transformation. Here's a fact about memory that connects to everything we've been discussing. Your memories are not stored like files on a computer. Each time you remember something, you reconstruct it from distributed pieces stored throughout your brain. And each reconstruction changes the memory slightly. You're not remembering the event. You're remembering the last time you remembered the event. Memories fade, distort, merge with other memories, get updated with new information. You are not a fixed entity with a perfect record of your past. You are constantly rewriting your own history, and in doing so, constantly recreating yourself. This is not a bug. It's a feature. It allows you to learn from experience, to integrate new understanding, to adapt. A perfect memory would be a prison, trapping you in an unchanging past. Your imperfect memory is the mechanism of growth. Let's talk about something called the mycelial network, another aspect of those underground fungal connections. Mycologist Paul Stamets has extensively studied how these networks affect forest health. He's found that a single cubic inch of soil can contain over 8 miles of mycelial threads. These networks extend throughout the forest floor, connecting trees, yes, but also connecting every plant, breaking down every dead thing, cycling every nutrient. The forest doesn't have a separate waste disposal system and communication system and transportation system. It has one integrated network that does all of these things simultaneously. And this network is ancient. Fungal fossils date back to at least 400 million years ago, possibly older. Fungi might have been among the first organisms to colonize land, creating soil and enabling plants to follow. The foundation of the terrestrial world you live in was laid by fungi. And here's something that should humble you. Fungi produce many of the molecules that changed human civilization. Penicillin, the first antibiotic, is produced by a fungus. Statins, the most widely prescribed medications for heart disease, come from fungi. Compounds that suppress the immune system and make organ transplants possible from fungi. Ethanol, the alcohol that has shaped human culture and consciousness for thousands of years, is produced by yeast, a single-celled fungus. And the relationship goes both ways. Humans have shaped fungal evolution by selecting for desirable traits. The yeast used to make bread and beer are domesticated species that don't exist in the wild anymore. We've been in partnership with fungi for as long as we've been human, and we didn't even know it until recently. Here's a retention oak. In the final sections, I'm going to reveal how time itself might be an illusion, how the universe might be conscious, and why your existence is far more miraculous than you've ever imagined. We're approaching the culmination of this journey. Stay with me. But first, a moment of appreciation. If you're still here, listening, learning, allowing these ideas to shift your perspective, you're part of something special. This isn't passive consumption. This is active engagement with ideas that matter. Subscribe if you haven't. Like this video. Comment and tell me what fact has affected you most deeply. Let's build this community of wonder seekers together. Time is not what you think it is. Physicists have known for over a century that time is relative, that it flows at different rates depending on speed and gravity. Einstein proved this with special and general relativity. Time moves slower for objects moving at high speeds. Time moves slower in strong gravitational fields. An astronaut on the International Space Station ages slightly slower than people on Earth. Not by much, about 0.007 seconds per 6 months, but measurably slower. And this isn't theoretical. GPS satellites have to account for time dilation, or they accumulate errors and become useless within hours. Time is malleable, flexible, dependent on the observer's reference frame. But it gets stranger. The laws of physics work the same forward and backward in time. If you filmed fundamental particles interacting and played the film backward, you couldn't tell the difference. Time symmetry is built into the deepest laws of nature. So why does time seem to flow only forward? Why do we remember the past but not the future? The answer has to do with entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, which states that disorder in a closed system always increases over time. But here's the thing. Entropy only increases because the universe started in a state of incredibly low entropy, all matter and energy concentrated in the Big Bang. As the universe expands and cools, entropy increases. Stars form, burn out, scatter their elements. Galaxies cluster and eventually disperse. Heat distributes evenly until no energy gradients exist and no work can be done. The heat death of the universe, maximum entropy, the ultimate equilibrium. And in this view, time is just the direction in which entropy increases. The arrow of time points from low entropy to high entropy. But why did the universe start in a low entropy state? That's one of the deepest unsolved questions in physics. And some physicists, like Carlo Rovelli, argue that time might not be fundamental at all. At the quantum level, time behaves strangely. Particles can exist in superposition, in multiple states simultaneously, until observed. The act of measurement seems to collapse possibilities into a single reality. And in the equations of quantum mechanics, time appears differently than in classical physics. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics, like Wheeler-DeWitt equation, suggests that time is an emergent property, something that arises from more fundamental timeless laws. In this view, the universe doesn't evolve through time. It exists as a timeless whole, and our experience of time flowing is an artifact of our consciousness, a way of organizing our experience of this timeless reality. What does this mean for you? It means the past might not be gone. The future might not be unwritten. Everything that has ever happened and will ever happen might exist simultaneously in a timeless block universe, and your consciousness is just moving through it, experiencing different moments in sequence. Your whole life, from birth to death, already exists as a complete structure. You're just experiencing it piece by piece. This is unsettling, but also liberating. If your life already exists as a complete entity, then it has a shape, a pattern, a meaning, even if you can't see it from within. Every moment of suffering is already balanced by moments of joy. Every loss already has its eventual resolution. You don't have to create meaning. You have to discover the meaning that's already there. Now let me tell you about something called integrated information theory, developed by neuroscientist Giulio Tononi. This theory proposes that consciousness is a fundamental property of any system that integrates information. The more information a system integrates, the more conscious it is. Your brain integrates vast amounts of information from sensory inputs, memories, emotional states, creating a unified experience of consciousness. But according to this theory, any system that integrates information has some degree of consciousness. A simple organism like a worm has minimal consciousness. A dog has more. A human has much more. But even a thermostat, which integrates information about temperature to control heating, might have an infinitesimal amount of consciousness. And here's the profound part. The theory predicts that consciousness is substrate independent. It doesn't matter if the system is biological or artificial, carbon-based or silicon-based. If it integrates information in the right way, it's conscious. This raises the possibility that the universe itself might be conscious, not in the sense of having thoughts or intentions, but in the sense of integrating information. Every particle in the universe interacts with other particles, exchanging information through fundamental forces. The universe is a vast, integrated information processing system. According to integrated information theory, it should have some degree of consciousness, probably vastly different from human consciousness, but consciousness nonetheless. You are not separate from the universe. You are a localized increase in the universe's consciousness, a place where the cosmos became aware of itself. When you think, you're using atoms forged in stars, following laws that emerged from the Big Bang, experiencing awareness that might be a fundamental property of reality itself. Let me share something about quantum entanglement that will challenge your intuitions. When two particles interact and then separate, they remain connected in a way that Einstein called spooky action at a distance. If you measure one particle and find it in a particular state, the other particle, no matter how far away, instantly assumes the corresponding state. This has been verified experimentally countless times. Particles separated by kilometers, even theoretically by light years, remain entangled. Change one, and the other changes instantaneously, faster than light that traveled between them. This doesn't violate relativity, because you can't use entanglement to send information. But it does mean that the universe is fundamentally non-local. Particles that have interacted are still, in some sense, the same system, regardless of distance. And here's the thing. Every particle in your body was once part of the primordial fireball of the Big Bang. Every particle has interacted with countless other particles throughout cosmic history. At the quantum level, you might be entangled with the entire universe. Not in a measurable way. The entanglement is incredibly fragile and breaks down easily. But fundamentally, the idea of separation might be an illusion. You are not in the universe. You are part of the universe, woven into its fabric at the deepest level. Here's something about stars that connects to your existence in a profound way. Every atom in your body, heavier than hydrogen, was forged in the core of a star. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the oxygen you breathe, all of it was created by nuclear fusion in stars that lived and died before our sun existed. When massive stars die in supernova, they scatter these elements into space. Clouds of this enriched gas eventually collapse under gravity, forming new stars and planets. Our sun is a third-generation star, an Earth formed from the remnants of previous stellar generations. You are literally made of stardust. This isn't metaphor, it's chemistry. The atoms that compose you were forged in nuclear furnaces burning at millions of degrees, scattered by explosions visible across galaxies, drifting through space for millions of years before collecting into the planet where you were born. Carl Sagan said, "We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." And this is literally true. You are the universe, a small part of it that has become conscious and aware. When you look at the stars, you're not just an external observer. You're the universe looking at itself, matter and energy organized into a pattern that can contemplate its own existence. This is not insignificant. This might be the most significant thing that happens anywhere. In a universe of dead matter following mindless laws, you are an exception. You are a place where the universe wakes up. Let me tell you about the anthropic principle. In its weak form, it simply states that the universe must be compatible with the conscious life that observes it, because if it weren't, no one would be here to notice. But the strong form suggests something more profound. The fundamental constants in nature, things like the strength of gravity, the charge of an electron, the mass of a proton, these values seem fine-tuned for life. Change any of them by even a tiny fraction, and stars wouldn't form, or atoms wouldn't be stable, or chemistry as we know, it would be impossible. The universe appears designed for life, or at least astonishingly suited to it. Some people interpret this as evidence of a creator. Others propose the multiverse theory. Infinite universes exist with different constants, and we find ourselves in one where the constants allow life simply because those are the only universes that have observers. But here's another possibility. Maybe consciousness affects reality at the quantum level. The observer effect in quantum mechanics shows that measurement changes the state of a system. Some interpretations, like the participatory anthropic principle proposed by physicist John Wheeler, suggest that conscious observation might play a role in actualizing reality. The universe exists in a superposition of possible states, and consciousness collapses those possibilities into actuality. In this view, the universe isn't just compatible with consciousness. It requires consciousness to exist in a definite state. You are not just observing reality. You are participating in its creation, moment by moment. This is deeply calming if you sit with it. You are not a powerless observer of an indifferent universe. You are an active participant in an unfolding cosmic story. Your consciousness matters, not just to you, but to the nature of reality itself. Here's a fact about the present moment that should change how you experience time. Neuroscientists have determined that your experience of now actually spans about 2 to 3 seconds. Your brain integrates sensory information over this window to create the feeling of the present moment. Events that happen within this window seem simultaneous, even if they're slightly separated in time. But here's the strange part. The brain processes different sensory inputs at different speeds. Visual information takes about 100 milliseconds to process. Auditory information takes about 10 milliseconds. Touch takes about 20 milliseconds. So when you see someone clap their hands, hear the sound, and see their hands make contact, these events are reaching your conscious awareness at different times, but your brain synchronizes them to create a unified experience. The present moment is a construction, a story your brain tells you about what's happening, not a direct experience of reality. And consciousness itself has a delay. Experiments by Benjamin Libet in the 1980s showed that your brain begins initiating an action about half a second before you become consciously aware of deciding to act. The decision happens first, then your consciousness experiences it as a choice. Free will, in the traditional sense, might be an illusion. Or at least, it's more complicated than it seems. You are not a mind controlling a body. You are a complex system, most of which operates below consciousness, and your conscious experience is a summary, a story your brain tells itself about what it's doing and why. But this doesn't make you less significant. It makes you more mysterious. You are not a simple, unified entity. You are a vast collection of processes, mostly unconscious, creating the experience of being a single self. And this self, this story you tell yourself about who you are, it's flexible. It changes over time. The you that exists today is not the you that existed 10 years ago. Your memories have changed. Your beliefs have evolved. Your cells have been replaced. The only continuous thing about you is the pattern, the organization, the process of being you. And that pattern is precious, unique, unrepeatable. Let me share something about sleep that brings us full circle. When you sleep, your brain doesn't shut down. It enters different states, cycling through stages of increasing depth before entering REM sleep, where dreaming occurs. During deep sleep, your brain clears metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking hours. This cleaning process, only discovered in 2013 by neuroscientist Maiken Nedergaard, is essential for cognitive function. Without sleep, these waste products build up and cause damage. Sleep isn't rest in the sense of inactivity. It's active maintenance, necessary work that your brain can only do when you're not using it for conscious thought. And dreams, those strange narratives your brain creates during REM sleep, might serve important functions. One theory is that dreaming helps process emotions, integrating experiences, and consolidating memories. Another theory is that dreams are your brain's way of testing responses to situations, running simulations to prepare for possible futures. Whatever their function, dreams show that your brain is creative, narrative-driven, constantly making meaning from random neural activity. Even in sleep, you're telling yourself stories, creating significance from noise. Here's what I want you to understand. Everything I've shared with you tonight, every fact about nature, every insight from physics and biology and neuroscience, it all points to the same conclusion. You are not separate from nature. You are nature. You are made of the same atoms, following the same laws, part of the same unfolding story that began with the Big Bang and continues through you. And nature is not random or meaningless. It's structured, patterned, beautiful in ways we're only beginning to understand. The universe is not hostile to life. It created life. It created consciousness. It created you. And you matter. Not because you're special, in the sense of being different from everything else, but because you're special in the sense of being a part of something unimaginably vast and ancient and interconnected. When you feel small, remember that you contain multitudes. Every breath involves billions of molecules moving in patterns described by quantum mechanics. Every thought involves billions of neurons forming networks more complex than any human-made computer. Every moment of your existence is sustained by systems that have been refined over billions of years of evolution. You are the universe experiencing itself. You are stardust that became conscious. You are patterns of energy and matter that learn to contemplate their own existence. This is not a metaphor. This is literal truth, confirmed by physics and chemistry and biology. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, if the vastness of what I've shared makes you feel insignificant, flip the perspective. You are significant because you're part of this vastness. You couldn't exist without it, and in some strange way, it couldn't fully exist without you. The universe spent 13.8 billion years creating the conditions for your existence. Every star that died to scatter heavy elements into space, every galaxy that formed and evolved, every moment since the Big Bang led to this moment, right now, with you listening to these words. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, Know that you're supported by systems older than mountains, connected to processes spanning galaxies, part of a story that's still being written. You are safe because you're home, and home is not a place. It's a state of being, a recognition that you belong here, that you're made of this place, that you're not an intruder in the universe, but a natural, inevitable consequence of its laws and history. The trees are breathing. The mountains are exhaling water. The soil is alive with networks of connection. The stars are forging new elements. And you are here, aware, thinking, feeling, being. You are the universe's answer to the question of its own existence. You are what it means for reality to know itself. Rest now. Let these truths settle into your consciousness. You don't have to understand everything. You don't have to figure it all out tonight. Just know that you're part of something beautiful, something ancient, something that will continue long after you're gone, but that exists right now, in this moment, as you. The ocean waves are still crashing in their perfect rhythm. The forests are still breathing with you. The stars are still singing in frequencies you can't hear. And you are still here, still part of it all, still connected to everything that was, and is, and will be. Sleep well. You are exactly where you need to be. You are exactly what the universe intended when it created consciousness and wonder and the capacity for peace. You are enough. You have always been enough. You will always be enough. Good night.